Scratchie woke up on the couch. What am I to do? I don't know what's going on. There's a big, tall man. There's a boy. There's a man again. And another man. There is a woman. But the rest of them are men. What am I doing here? Why am I here? I don't want to go back to sleep. I'm not tired. What am I doing here? Why am I here? Suddenly, Scratchie was hating where she was, the predicament that she was in. She didn't like the situation at all. Not one bit. She was laying on the couch now, and she had no idea why. Who moved her? She just looked at the couch. It had a few springs poking out of the fabric, with cotton surrounding it, so she played in the cotton. All the other grown-ups were talking. She didn't bother to listen in. She didn't care. She didn't want to care. Not anymore, at least. Hungry. There was a faint voice in her head. What did the voice say? She didn't hear. So she continued to play with fabric, keeping her head down, smiling to herself, and giggling whenever it would make certain shapes. But then the voice came back. Hungry, it said louder. Scratchie was hungry. She knew her name was Scratchie because there was a little name tag on her. It said Scratchie in Sharpie with a smiley face. She didn't know who gave her this name, but they probably gave her the name Scratchie because of all the scars and scratches all over her legs and arms and body. Scratchie. It's a lovely name, I guess. Scratchie didn't care whether it was a lovely name or not. She liked having a name, or at least remembering one. But she was hungry. She didn't know how to contain it, so she just let it loose. Her eyes grew black and red. Her teeth became the size of the spring she was playing with. 2 inches long. Her fingers grew into claws. A tail grew out of her backside. And her clothes seemed a little more tattered. Her jaw detached from itself, but was still floating in place somehow. And she was a monster again. A monster she hated. One of the people noticed her. Slender Man, can I get your attention for a short minute? It was the woman of the bunch. Yes, what is it? It's the little girl. I think she's awake, and I think she's hungry. They all looked towards her. She was breathing heavily. Scratchie was quietly saying food under her breath, staring at everyone and saying food. The tall man, or slender man, knew what was about to happen. But then the monster stopped saying food. It started saying, Hazel, Hazel, Hazel. She seemed to get louder and louder by the second. Hazel. A name you'd give to someone with hazel eyes, or brown eyes, or golden hair, or brown hair. Someone you give to someone, a name that you give to someone that was nice and sweet and kind. Who was this Hazel? No one knew. But one person did. Slender Man knew who Hazel was. Yes, he did. The monster, however, stopped moving, seemed to stop breathing. While Slender Man had his chance, he used his tentacles to grab her, and he threw her into another room and slammed the door and locked it. It was a closet that he had thrown her into. He would reinforce it later, but for now, he would just hope that she'd fall asleep in the dark, or tone down at least a little. And when the girl would fall asleep, he'd reinforce the room and throw her back in. That was his plans for today. Everyone else stood in shock, staring at Slender Man. He glared back at them. All of them had a shiver go up their spine. Slender Man was always scary. That's why he's such a big deal in the Creepypasta world. And why it's a big deal to work with him. But sometimes they regret working with him. But that's not something you should tell your boss. Your scary, overpowered boss. Of course, they just looked away when he glared at them. And they started to mind their own business and talk about other things. Lulu started watching TV. And Ben just watched her from a distance while also talking to the boys. Jeff was cleaning a knife that he had. Who knows what Hoodie was doing? Tiki was being weird. Tiki Toby, that is. Twitching in the corner by himself. What a weirdo, Jeff thought. Of course, Jeff and Toby were friends, right? At least that's what Toby thought. Jeff always thought otherwise, but hey, if people, think they're best friends, then that's what people think. After a while, Jeff glanced over at Ben and thought for a moment, well, since they are creepypastas, they belong on the internet, so that means they'd look up their name at any time. One day, Jeff was looking up his name and noticed that some people had shipped him and Ben, which was one of the weirdest things Jeff had ever seen.